Welcome back to Capital City Sunday. We're switching gears now to talk about the horrible issue of student loan debt and the rising costs that students are facing. I'm joined by Scot Ross from One Wisconsin Now and the One Wisconsin Institute. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here, Greg.
I think a lot of people know that this is an issue, but I don't think anybody knows how to solve it. I mean, when I got out of school, and I paid my own way through school, worked 20, 25 hours a week, I had about $5,200, I think, in student loan debt. That's a fantasy now for kids today, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely. I mean, we have crossed the $1 trillion threshold when it comes to student loan debt. That is more than every other consumer debt in America, save for mortgage debt. Student loan debt has been exploding. It's gone from $200 billion in the year 2000 to over $1 trillion as of 2011. And it's a lot of things came together to make this national crisis. And it's not just hurting students. It is a drag in our economy, and it is really, it's really snatching the American dream from so many students who just want to get educated so they can go out, and have a good middle class existence.
I think the biggest question everybody thinks about right away is, why are tuition costs rising at the rate that they are? Because I mentioned to you off camera that I looked at my own school, UW-Milwaukee. It costs about 3 times as much per year to go there now as it did when I was in school. And I graduated in 1994. It's not that long ago. Why has that tuition just gone up so much?
Well, like you say, I mean, it has exploded. I mean, since 1980, tuition has gone up 600%, sort of across the board. A lot of factors went into this. First of all, student loans were allowed to be privatized back in the mid-1990s. And subsequently after that, every single consumer protection that is afforded a commercial transaction in America was taken away from student loan debt, mostly because Wall Street lobbied Congress for that. Then, the investment in higher education by the state and federal government has gone down. I think the estimate is about 26% over the last decade. So people need to go to college now. I mean, we're told it is, higher education is the ticket to a good career and a good life. And students are having to take these loans out in order to be able to take that chance and really have a thriving future. Unfortunately, student loan debt in higher education has now become basically a ticket to indentured servitude for the middle class. And it is a huge drag on our economy. That's something that at the One Wisconsin Institute that we did some substantial science on and showed some really shocking results.
And I think that a lot of is, well, maybe kids shouldn't go to college. It costs too much. Maybe they should get a skill. I just think that's the wrong message for the growth of the country. I mean, we do need skilled laborers, and we do need people who with technical college degrees, but I think when that becomes the goal as opposed to college, the overall economy in the next 50 years is not going to go in the right direction.
Yeah, well, the frightening thing is, for somebody who gets a technical college degree in the state of Wisconsin, the average repayment length of their debt is almost 17 years.
Even with
a technical college degree. Our science showed that somebody with a 4-year degree is taking almost 19 years to pay off that student loan debt. And if we think about consumer spending and the things that drive the economy, our science showed that every year in the state of Wisconsin, we lose $200 million in new car purchasing power directly attributable to student loan debt. Not to mention, when you're talking about home ownership, if you have a student loan debt, you are 2/3 more likely to be a renter as opposed to owning your own home, which is the symbolism of the middle class here in America. One really shocking statistic out of our science was that for people with household incomes between $50,000 and $75,000, 86% of renters had student loan debt. So it is literally costing people their ability to own their own home. And it's simply because they wanted to get a higher education. What has to happen is we have to recognize that the rules were changed. And even the student loans that you took out and that I took out in the late 80s, early 90s are not even the same student loans that students are having to take out today.
Are you talking interest rates or just the amount?
Interest rates have exploded. The fact that you can't refinance a student loan, for instance, unlike other loans.
Right.
The fact that you can't reconsolidate if you've consolidated your loans into one payment, can't do that. State usury laws specifically are not applicable to student loans. There is no statute of limitations, and this is, I think this is something that it's both amusing scary as well. There are only a few crimes that statutes of limitations, that there are no statutes of limitations for.
Homicide.
Murder, kidnapping, war crimes, treason, and essentially student loans. So that is what, again, by Wall Street getting its foot in the door and getting what it wanted when it comes to the student loans, something they had no business being in the first place. If you think about higher education being a public good, this is the system that's been created as a result of that, and so that's what we're fighting against.
I'm also curious, when I took out student loans or when I applied for financial aid, every year they would say, here's your number and here's the number we think that you could pay back reasonably.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, too, now, since it is a Wall Street item now, are they saying, well, loan them as much as they want?
Absolutely.
And I know a lot of 20-year-olds who don't think about it at all. They're like, oh, sure, if they want to give me $12,000 instead of $7,000, I'll take it. Why not?
No, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that the private market, came in and filled a quote-unquote need, and that was the availability of capital so that students could pay skyrocketing tuition, as well as skyrocketing living expenses. I mean, like, for instance, when you and I went to college, didn't have cell phones. That wasn't needed. Didn't need internet access. Didn't need a laptop computer to make sure you could do all your work. Like, those things are, the cost of living is just higher now. And again, higher education funding has absolutely not kept up with inflation, and in fact has dropped in terms of the percentage of investment that federal and state governments are doing in it.
And I also know that, as I said, when you get out of school, I know certainly people who get out of college with a degree in broadcast journalism, they're making more money than I did, but they're not making 3 times the money I did to pay back 3 times the student loan debt.
No, exactly. What we're seeing is that, there will be only certain people who can take certain career paths, and that's not, again, higher education is a public good, and here in the state of Wisconsin, technical college was free until 1972. And you could go to college and work and be able to pay your tuition. That's what my mom did. Right. She got out of school with about $50 a month of debt for a couple years, right, and was able to be a teacher starting salary in 1969 at $6,900 a year and go on to teach for 35 years. But we'll see people who don't take that route with teaching because of that, and it's a real shame, because again, higher education is supposed to be that ticket to going out, starting your own small business, working towards the future. But right now, what we have is the average 4-year degree in the state of Wisconsin gets out of college with $348 of debt a month for 18.7 years. That's a payback of about $87,000, and it's just simply an untenable situation. It's a situation that has to be changed, because what we're seeing is it's not just about the $1 trillion of student loan debt, Greg. It's about, we're going to see a half-life of that become $2 trillion within the next 5 to 7 years.
How much can the universities and colleges do, though, to cut? And that's something that comes up a lot, and especially in conservative circles, they will say, these universities are spending way too much on administrative costs. And with some of the projects that I see out there, especially living in Madison now, I do wonder, is all of this necessary?
Yeah, I think that what you have to look at is, if you're going to come up with a real solution to solve the student loan debt crisis, you have to go to the source. Privatization failed the people. Wall Street getting all of its way failed the people. The lack of investment and the reduction of investment by state and federal government failed. It's not the borrowers, and certainly the universities can always tighten their belts, but you have to look at those first 3 drivers as to what got us to the student loan debt if you're going to come up with real solutions.
Do you know, is there anything in Congress now that anybody is putting forth that would solve any of these issues that you're talking about?
Yeah, there's a forgiveness bill that would essentially create 10%. You'd pay 10% of your income for 10 years. More reasonable ability to get, to make sure that there's some legislation that would allow private student loans to have protection again. These are all moving in the right direction, but this is a national crisis that has to be tackled, because it is killing our economy. It is keeping the economy from its full potential, and certainly when you think about home ownership and automobile purchases, those are the 2 big things that the middle class buys as it goes out into the world, as its young minds germinate and contribute to society. So we need to make sure that that is able to continue, and the way we do that is to do something about this crisis of student loan debt.
I know that student loans have to be taken out now almost by everybody to get through college, but I do wonder if there's any education for younger people in terms of the crisis they're going to face if they don't think about how much they're borrowing, because I have a friend who's younger than me, maybe 10 years younger than me. He went to undergrad, he went to graduate school. He basically lived off student loans to pay everything, rent, food, you name it. And, he's facing 30 years worth of debt easily, and I wonder if somebody had caught him when he was 18 and said, work a little more, take out a little less. Mm-hmm. He might have been in a better position. Yeah, I mean, certainly truth in lending is an important thing, and education of people as they're taking out these loans is important to see what the situation is. Unfortunately, again,